Hey everybody. So up until now, we've been creating, sort of hard coding these shapes onto our body in our HTML. But the big power, the real power of D3 is the ability to power the visualization based on data. So even if we don't know what that data will show us, right, we want to explore and see what that data is. So we won't dictate that a circle needs a radius of 15, but rather provide data that then will create a visualization, and then we'll be able to see a circle's radius that'll then give us some kind of insight. And so just to give an example of that, here's a visualization that I created. It's called Unfiltered Search, and it renders basically a map of the country where every bubble is a state. And you're able to search certain keywords and see how frequently that keyword is searched in each given state. So in this case, fishing, searched often by Alaska and Maine. Alligators search often down in the South, Florida, South Carolina. You'll see football is searched often by Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia. You can even type search terms in here like JavaScript, and all this data is real time. So we see that the results are retrieved through an API call that then provides data that then powers in this case, the radius of these circles. So again, this data could be anything. The width could be anything that's returned from the API call, and the D3 visualization knows how to handle it. So let's go ahead and use that in our visualization here. So I'm going to go ahead and, like usual, start from a blank canvas, and let's create a data set. So in this case, a data set can be, let's just start with a simple data set with just one datum, the number 15. So let's go ahead and create an SVG. So do data d3.selectTheBody, and we will append on top of it an SVG. So that'll be our canvas that we'll work on. Save that to a variable, and let's paint onto that SVG. In this case, let's go ahead and select all circles. Now you might say, what are you doing here? There aren't any circles. And the answer is, yes, I know. This is going to return an empty selection of circles. There aren't any circles. And then we're going to marry that empty selection of circles to that data set using what's called data, so a data method. And it takes a data set. So in this case, we'll append the data set we'll basically marry that data with this selection of circles, which is empty. Now let me show you a good visualization of that. So we'll say here, D3 understanding joins. This is a great tutorial information by Mike Bostock. So we'll see here that we have a great Venn diagram, and it'll show what we're doing. Basically what we just did here is we married a data set with a selection of elements, in this case empty. So when you marry those two, you get three different selections: the enter, the update, and the exit selection. Now what this means is if there's data, if we're executing one of these and there is data that does not have associated elements, which is the case that we're dealing with here, that'll be the enter selection. What does that mean? That means that those elements need to be entered onto the screen, and it gives you the opportunity to do that. I'll show you how in a second. Just understand that conceptually, that what we're doing is we have data without associated elements, and that's part of the enter selection to be added to the screen. If there's data that doesn't have elements, the whole point of this visualization is to show that data. So that data needs to have an element associated with it to be placed onto the screen, and the enter selection gives you the opportunity to do that. Now let's talk about the exit selection. So if it's the case that this returned, let's say, 3 circles, but yet we only had one datum, so in this case 15, well then 2 of those circles won't have associated data. So what are they doing on the page? If they are on the page and they don't have associated data, they should leave. This data visualization is a data visualization that should reflect the data. And if the data is no longer there, they should exit. So that's why it's the exit selection. Now, what's this third case? What if we have the case where there is a match? There is a given circle that does have associated data associated with it. In that case, we're given the opportunity to update it. So that data might be different, right? That data might not be 15. It might have changed to 20 or changed to 30. In which case, we're able to update that circle to a new radius or some kind of other property. So each of these circles will have inherent data associated with them. In this case, I'm not going to use that data. I'm just going to embed it within different circles. So let's go ahead and make a circle out of this datum, 15. So we selected all of the circles. There aren't any. We married it with the data set of 1. So in this case, all we have is an enter selection. So let's go ahead, and the way you do that is you do dot enter. So dot enter now gives us that data that lacks an associated element on the screen. And we can go ahead and give it an associated element. So let's append a circle, and to that circle, in order to see it, actually let's go ahead and just see what that looks like. I'm going to refresh, and we see here that on the SVG we have a circle. Wonderful. Let's go ahead and make it visible on the screen. So let's give it a radius. So we'll give it an attribute, R, and we'll give it 15. And then let's give it a CX, right? So we have an attribute of CX. Let's give it 100. And then same idea here. Let's give it a CY of 100. Let's see what that looks like. There we go. So this circle now has embedded within it this data point of 15. And so this is rendered automatically depending on what the data set is. If we were to have a data set where it was 1520, we'd end up with 2 circles, as we do here. You just can't see them because they're overlapping, but you could see down here that there are 2 circles. 1, 2. Great. So that is how you make a visualization that is powered by a data set.